The summertime was always a good time growing up, right? We didn't have school, all those kind of things. For me, one of my favorite things about the summer was being able to kind of go and stay at a friend's house. And there was a bunch of times that, like, most of those encounters looked the same, right? Eat too much junk food, stay up all night, play video games, right? Like, be on social media or at that time, AOL Instant Messenger. If you don't know what that is, then I'll feed in later. But like, I just remember, like, we would do all, like, it was just a fun time, right? It was a good time. There was though this one time I remember. I was probably about 13 years old, 12 years old, and I went to a buddy's house, and it was during the day, right? I didn't sleep over. It was just, we were at his house during the day, and this particular friend, when we were at his house, we were outside all the time. So like, we would camp out, we would build fires, we would do all kind of stuff. Well, this day we were running around, we were doing something, and we decided that we were going to go ride four-wheelers. So we jumped on the four-wheel, like we had been running around. I threw on some rubber boots, right, just because we were barefoot, took off, and we heading into the cane fields on the four-wheeler. And I remember as we were riding, like, we're cutting up in cane rows and stuff, doing everything that farmers get angry at us about, and going into, like, off-roading and this and that. Well, we get on the property that we were at the very, very back of the property, there was the Farty Arpin Canal. And this canal, normal, basic drainage canal, nothing special. But when we pulled up, what we noticed was in this area where we were, there was this old rickety bridge. And it was myself and two other guys. And I remember we pull up to this bridge, and we were told explicitly, stay off of that bridge, right? And like little boys, what did we do? We got on the bridge, right? Like, that was the first thing we had to do. So we get off, we see it, and they run ahead, and they jump on, like, and these are two, like, very, very agile, very, very kind of light feet, right? They were skinny and I was fat, right? Like, that's what it basically was. So, like, they run up, they jump on the bridge, they doing all this stuff, they running across it, they, like, having fun, throwing stuff in the water, like, whatever, checking out the fish, right? All this stuff. And I'm, like, hesitant. I'm on the side, and I'm like, I don't know if I should do this. And they're like, come on, I dare you, which is like the secret words of a bad idea. So I get up, and I go across I start walking across the bridge. And I remember, I like, take my first step, and it's like, all right, that board's good. All right, good. All right, I take another step, and I'm like, okay, that one gave a little bit. That's not as good. And then I'm like, nope, not that one. And like, I take a big step, and I'm trying to, like, kind of follow where they stepped and where they walked. I get to a point now here, and I'm like, that ain't good. So, like, I kind of take a step back, and I'm like, that ain't good either. So, like, I try and take another step forward, and what ends up happening, my foot goes through, and then my other foot kind of follows, and now I catch myself, like, I'm like, my entire bottom half is through the bridge. I've got my arms out basically holding on, and I hear it slowly cracking. And I've had just enough time for my buddy to get a sight of my two buddies who are laughing at me because they're like, ha, 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 the fat kid's about to fall through the bridge. But anyway, I'm there, and I'm just like, oh no, I'll see you at my funeral, right? And sure enough, boom, I drop into the water. Now, it was a funny episode, and ha, ha, ha. Until I realized, like, now, in this moment, my mind, like, slowed down to, like, super slow speed. And, like, everything became very, very clear in a very short period of time. Because the moment I hit the water, I remembered my dad telling me, never get in a boat with rubber boots. Because if you fall in the water, they become like cinder blocks. They fill up very quickly, and you sink. And as I'm thinking this, I feel myself being pulled down. Now, 12 years old, on my way to the bottom of about a 10 to 12 foot deep canal, which I did not think it was that deep, and I'm starting to panic because I don't know if I'm coming up. I just remember, like, the desperation that kind of kicked in, where all of a sudden my right foot, I was able to kick as hard as I possibly could, and my foot slipped out the boot. The boot goes up. I was able to kind of doggy paddle up just enough to kick the other off and then swim to the shore. And I remember when I got to the top, like, it was the left one was covered in soft mud, and the right one just had a little bit of mud underneath it, because I had just enough time to kick it out before it sunk into the mud, and then I was stuck. And my buddies and all, they're laughing when I get out of the water, and I'm just kind of sitting on the shore, and I'm kind of like, I'm realizing, I'm like, that was I just had a near-death kind of experience. Like, I don't know, I don't know if I should be alive right now, but I am. Okay, praise you, Lord. Like, But that moment of desperation, I don't know if you've ever had something like that, where it was like an accident that almost happened but didn't, but like where it's just like this moment of desperation where you just start to panic and grab for whatever you possibly can that's going to save you. Now, it may seem dramatic, but I think today in our gospel, that's exactly what's happening with Jairus, this synagogue official, and this woman with the hemorrhage. Because if we understand where they are and what they're going through at the moment that they see Jesus, at the moment that they run out to Jesus, and particularly what they overcame to go to him, then I think we can actually see that that desperation is just as deep as 12-year-old me at the bottom of the Fort Yardman Canal. Let's look at Jairus first. Jairus is a synagogue official, meaning he is a Jew, meaning he is a Jew that has a particular status and a particular role, so he knows about Jesus. He's right there with the rest of the religious officials and the religious, the religious leaders of the Jewish faith, and they see Jesus as this prophet who does some kind of miracle some way. They don't know how, what kind of magic, how he's doing it. Maybe it's by the devil, they're not sure. But they see Jesus, they're suspicious of Jesus. They know that he does some stuff, they know he preaches a lot, and they know he has a big following. But the moment that Jairus' daughter is sick, the moment that Jairus comes into a desperate situation where we have tried everything, we've tried to do anything, we've tried to have these moments of curing her through all the means that we know and all the means that are available to us, the moment that none of that works, Jairus all of a sudden puts a lot of his prejudices about Jesus aside. You have fixed other people. Maybe you could fix my daughter. Parents know this, that if a kid's sick, if a kid's struggling, if a kid's hurting, then you're willing to do a whole lot and put a lot of yourself aside for the sake of your child. That's what leads Jairus to Jesus. It's a faith that he has that Jesus may be able to actually do something here. But he's got to overcome himself in a lot of ways. It's the same thing with the woman. It's a similar thing with the woman with the hemorrhage. Maybe a little bit different, but similar. Because the woman with the hemorrhage, when we hear this, the woman with the hemorrhage, we may not understand the context or kind of the desperate situation she actually finds herself in. Because if we don't understand Jewish ritual purity laws, then we can miss what's actually going on here. You see, for someone to be able to go into the temple and worship or attend the synagogue or just be part of a Jewish community, they had to follow very, very strict laws, right? You didn't work on the Sabbath day, that was one of them. But one of the main kind of categories of laws was that you didn't do anything unclean. So you couldn't touch a dead body. You couldn't touch blood, right? You couldn't eat pork or certain foods that were taboo. So the image of blood, right? This woman with the hemorrhage, the fact that she had a hemorrhage for 12 years actually means that she was cut off from the community for 12 years. She hadn't been able to worship. She hadn't been able to enter into Jewish holy spaces. She was cut off from the community. And no matter what she did, no matter how many times she went to doctors and tried to take care of it, nothing was working, nothing was helping. She was just stuck and cut off and pushed away and outcasted. It was actually, the purity laws were so intense that even if you were somebody who was unclean, you couldn't touch somebody who was clean. If you touched somebody who was clean, then they became unclean. Which makes it even more radical. That as Jesus is on this mission to go see this girl who's sick and on the verge of death and would ultimately die, that this woman is seeing him pass with this crowd of people, and the first moment, the first thing in her mind, despite all the cultural norms, despite all the purity laws, despite everything leaning against her, she says, I need to touch him. Because if I can touch him, then I could be healed. Her faith, something in her, the Holy Spirit working in her, right? Her faith is what compels her to go out and to actually move and to reach out and to actually touch Jesus and to be healed. And you can almost hear the shame that when Jesus turns and like looks and says, "Who is this that touched me?" or whatever, like you almost hear the kind of like sunken head that she approached with, right? Like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know I was supposed to not do that," right? And Jesus says, "No, no, no, you've been cured. Go." I think both of those cases, right? They're desperate kind of spots. They're desperate kind of situations, and it's so beautiful and powerful that Jesus shows up in both cases. The woman is cured of her affliction. Jairus' daughter, even though she dies, right? Jesus resurrects her, like brings her back to life. Talitha cum, I say, little girl, arise, right? Like in both cases, God shows up. And it's because both of these people approach with a spirit of faith. There's no reason why this should work. And yet in desperation, they're drawn to faith. God, you're going to answer it if I approach you. There's a lot of times I know for us that we can feel like we're in that desperate kind of spot. Maybe it's with a family issue. A marriage is struggling. Kids, just like the burden of life. Maybe it's a spot of just like discernment questions of what am I supposed to do, Lord, and I want to do, but I don't know how, and all these kind of things. Like there is a way, like I think there is an invitation for us today into a question of when we ask God to show up for something, do we believe that he will? Do we ask with real, true faith? Or do we come to God with a bunch of requests because we're supposed to? It's a test of our faith, right? Do we believe that God wants to and can achieve the impossible, do the impossible for us, for our good? Now, this is the interesting thing, though. This is the caveat. Is that in all of this, I have to believe that Jairus, after this moment with his daughter, like didn't just go, "Thank you so much, Jesus, appreciate it, all right, see you later," and went right back to his old life. I have to believe that the woman with the hemorrhage, after 12 years of dealing with this issue, dealing with this struggle, that she didn't just look back and just go, "Awesome, thank you," and she went right back to living how she was. Because faith compels us to go to the Lord, but faith also compels us to live differently. I was actually recently reading Father Boniface Hicks. He's a great, really, really beautiful, just a holy man. And he had a line in a book I was reading where he said, "God doesn't answer prayers that make us need him less." Let me say it again. God doesn't answer prayers that make us need him less. I think about like my own journey with like vocational discernment. I just wanted to know, what do you want me to do, God? 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 And like at a certain point, I'm like sitting there and I'm like angry and frustrated and aggravated because like, God, you're just not telling me, and I'm like failing grades all over the place. Like, what do you want me to do, God? Like, what do you want me to do, God? What do you want me to do, God? Because the question wasn't the right question. It's really not, what do you want me to do, God? But instead, God, how do you want me to follow you? How do you want me to stay close to you? In what way are you leading me as I'm with you? The interesting thing is that Jesus, as the divine physician, Jesus as the one who resurrects the little girl and who heals a woman of her affliction, right? Today, is not the divine physician who is like an earthly physician. Most doctors, when we go to them, the goal is to never go see them again, right? I show up because I'm sick. And I go to the doctor, and they give me a shot, and they give me some antibiotics, and like, hey, if you need to come back, come back. But hopefully I don't have to go back. You see, Jesus isn't like a regular doctor. Jesus is like as the divine physician says, no. I am not only the one you want to come to when you're sick, but I'm also the cure, and I'm also the medicine, and you just stay close. Because God doesn't answer prayers that make us need him less. As we're coming to Mass today, I don't know where you are. If you're in a spot that's like of desperation and you're just like, Lord, I just need you to show up in this one spot in my life. Please, for God's sake, please show up. I just need you right here. Then great, like you're in the right place. If you're in a spot where it's like maybe it's a lighter thing and it's not as important, but like, Lord, I'm just tired. Or Lord, I'm like, the summer has been hard. Then great, you're in the right place. But wherever we find ourselves, and whatever prayers we have on our heart, whatever intentions we approach the Lord with, God doesn't answer questions. God doesn't answer prayers that make us need him less. Because before the Lord's worried about answering your prayer, he's worried about being with you. Today, as we come to Mass, we're invited into a relationship with God. And that's not that's a phrase that gets used a lot, right? We talk about a relationship with God. But like the Almighty God wants a unique, unrepeatable relationship with you. He wants a unique and unrepeatable relationship with you. Not you all, not the community of St. Thomas, not all of us gathered, but with you individually. And he's going to show up for you. As we come to Mass, how do we respond to that relationship? How do we stay close to the Lord in that relationship? Even with all the intentions and the things we desire from the Lord. May today, as we come to Mass, we respond well to a unique and unrepeatable relationship that God desires for each one of us.